Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan, and it's great being back with you. Today we're talking about the Jezebel spirit and identifying the narcissists in your life. This has been an interesting episode, and I'm learning as I'm researching, and it's revealing in many cases. I look back on many clients and I think, well, yeah, I missed that one, or I missed this one, and then, oh yeah, I was right on that one. It's fascinating to learn about people, and it's fascinating to learn how to help people, especially those that we love. And it doesn't mean because somebody has an issue or a problem that they're awful or terrible. It means there's an area to work on. There's a weakness there that could be a potential strength at some point. Let's build the strengths up, and that weakness decreases in its severity. And we want balance. You know, in temperament counseling, we talk about that balance of weaknesses and strengths, that God gave us the weaknesses so that it would balance the strengths. And that way, strengths don't get out of hand. We don't become arrogant and haughty and all that stuff, prideful and everything. The weaknesses help keep the balance going. So a weakness doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, but it does mean you don't want the weaknesses to grow out of control either. And the problem with narcissism, that Jezebel narcissistic individuals, is they allow the strengths to get so strong, the weaknesses don't appear. You don't see those weaknesses. However, they're on the inside and they're there, but they're hidden. Today, we're talking about feigning ignorance. And before we get into that subject, I want to remind you that at New Horizons Institute of Counseling, we're for healing, peace, and harmony, to help you, to help others, to help bring peace and harmony into your life and into the family's life. Well, feigning. We've identified power and control tactics of the Jezebel narcissist. We've identified some of the mind games of the Jezebel narcissist. And in my short list, we've covered gaslighting, love bombing, hoovering, ghosting, tantrums, passive aggressive. Today we're on feigning ignorance. And feigning ignorance is you know, it's very close. It is lying, but lying is a whole nother topic, and we're going to get into that. But feigning ignorance it's cunning, and we'll be discussing that today. All of us kind of, well, I didn't know that, or, we kind of do things like that once in a while. But these individuals who are on that spectrum of mild to severe or malignant Jezebel, the true Jezebel, the malignant narcissist, those individuals tend to feign ignorance, the mind game of feigning ignorance, quite often. And we'll be talking about why. Well, the mind game of feigning ignorance is hidden aggression displayed by conning and manipulative tactics to cast doubts in the mind of the questioner or accuser about the legitimacy of the accusation that's being present. That casting doubts is a way of protecting themselves from the truth surfacing. Because remember, they're very insecure on the inside. They're very fearful of exposure on the inside. And so they do what they can, and feigning ignorance is one of the ways that they do it. Why use feigning ignorance? I mean, it's all, like I said earlier, all of us do it sometimes, but these people, they're often, I didn't hear you say that. I didn't know that. Well, I was busy and didn't think about it. Those little things, we all do a little bit, but these guys and gals, they do it quite often, and they're automatic with it. They're so quick with it, it puts doubts. So why use feigning ignorance or pretending to be innocent? several things that come to my mind as I was looking at this, and one was to avoid responsibility and accountability. They don't want to be held responsible for something that they are either not in control of or they don't want to be identified with. They make the questioner feel uncomfortable or embarrassed in some way while this is going on. So that's a way for them to say, oh, well, you should be the one who is embarrassed by this, or the one who is uncomfortable about this. It's not me. I haven't done anything wrong. They do it to avoid being confronted. They don't want that confrontation, because the confrontation would mean they have to reply quickly. They have to give a good answer. If they don't, they could be found out, or they could be seen as inadequate in some way, or they could be in trouble in one way or another, as many husbands or wives might be when that happens, or especially children. Casting doubts on evidence. Well, that's a reason why. Let's cast the doubts. Let's throw the doubts out there. I recall, and I hear this often, I read it often, where during World War II, the Nazis, they basically followed the philosophy of you tell a lie and you keep telling it, and if you tell it enough and you don't deter from telling it, well, then people will start believing it. And feigning ignorance is that type of tactic that goes on. It's a way for, if I keep pretending I'm innocent, if I keep pretending I don't know anything about this, I'm casting doubts in the other person, the accuser or the questioner. So they're making the accuser appear as a victimizer. It's kind of putting a flip on that, isn't it? They make the questioner appear as a victimizer. You're victimizing me. And the Jezebel narcissist, the manipulator, who is the manipulator, as the victim. I've just switched it around. I've just made you appear as though you're victimizing me, but I'm really the victimizer by the manipulations, the feigning of ignorance, or the lying that goes on. Why use ignorance again? Well, to appeal to the accuser's sense of goodwill. Now, not everybody has a sense of goodwill, but many people do. That's empathy, isn't it? Empathy is understanding, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, being able to think about, well, what did they go through in their past that has brought them to this point in their life? And so you feel for them. If you're an empathizer, if you have that gift, and I call it a gift because it really is, but you have to protect yourself when you have that gift. You have to set those boundaries, or the feigning ignorance of the Jezebel narcissist will take advantage of that. And that's what they try to do. If they identify you as an empathetic person, then they're going to try to take advantage of that by appealing to your sense of goodwill and innocence. They do it to evade responsibility and accountability. Why? Well, why would you evade responsibility and accountability? So nothing changes, perhaps. If nothing changes, then I can do whatever I want and nobody's bothering me. I don't have to change anything. And they don't like changing what they want to do, because remember, they're entitled. They're entitled to do whatever they want, whenever they want. As a result, they don't want you to change them. If they want to change, that's okay. But it's not okay for someone else to want to change them. To put the questioner on the defensive is another reason why they feign ignorance. If a questioner is not getting the information they need and they're continuing to question, they tend to get defensive and they begin to attack, or they begin to get stirred up. Now the one who's feigning the ignorance can now use that against the questioner in some way. Oh, look how bad you are. You know, look how nasty you are with me. You know, oh, you shouldn't talk that way to me. Casting doubts makes the empathetic accuser want to believe the manipulator's story. So the manipulator casts those doubts. The empathic questioner, accuser, not even necessarily accusing, but bringing up something to clarify. And it causes the questioner to go, this isn't working, I need to retreat. And so they retreat, they drop it. Yeah, off they go, they drop the subject. And the feigning of ignorance works. Yeah, it helps the Jezebel narcissist to skirt by this one and get prepared for the next one, whatever that might be. All of these characteristics of feigning ignorance is unhealthy, but over time they get better and better at it. And that gets very frustrating for husbands or wives or friends or co-workers, bosses or employees when they have a boss that's this way. I once had a client whose boss, and it was a big company, and the boss often fired people for no reasons at all or for very little reasons. And this person learned that he needed to have some kind of protection there. He was expecting it's going to be him one of these days. And obviously the boss was a strong narcissist. And so I suggested, well, and this was many years ago before computers, I said, well, why don't you write down what he tells you when he asks you to do something. Write it down on a 2x5 card or 2x4 card, whatever size they are, and date it, you know, and then keep it in a Rolodex so you can find it quickly. And that way, if he accuses you of doing something that he told you to do, but he didn't like it, thought about it later and didn't like it, and he says you're fired for it, you can give him the card and say, you know, here's what you told me to do. You know, we do that with texting nowadays, you know, or emailing. We keep those records and all that of those kinds of things. And he did that, and sure enough, it wasn't a couple of weeks later that boss targeted him and had told him to do something, and he did it, and he did it well. But the boss felt threatened by what was done because he did it so well. You know, narcissists feel threatened when you do something well because it makes them feel like, oh, you're better than I am, or others are going to see you as better than me. I better get rid of you. Get someone else who's incompetent in that job. And unfortunately, that's what they do. That's why you often have in tiers of bosses, supervisors, and all that, you often have the incompetent ones as the supervisor. The others who are competent for that position never get promoted as a result because there's usually a narcissist in there somewhere. That's not all businesses, so don't go to work and say, I'm accusing all your supervisors or whatever as being narcissists. That's not true, but you're going to have a certain few like that. And when you identify that, you can see why. You don't need to be that way. You don't need to get into a struggle or a conflict with someone who is that way. So this guy was able to just take the card and say, well, sir, here I wrote down what you told me to do, and I dated it, you know, here it is. And he had told me later, he said, oh, that boss looked flustered. And he turned around and he said, oh, okay. And then he walked away. And I spoke with him months later. The boss never did that again to him because he knew he was going to be held accountable for it. We don't have to yell and argue when we're addressing someone who's a Jezebel narcissist. They're going to do whatever they're going to do, but we do need to be prepared, anticipating whatever it is that they may do. It's sort of like history repeats itself, so you see what is their history and be prepared for whatever may come. I hope this was helpful. We're going to go to part 2 of this next time. Thank you for watching. Remember to push that button, that like button, if you got something out of this today, or ring that bell if you'd like to be notified each time a new episode comes out. God bless.